2444 on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line asking, what letter grade would you give to each of the 3 commitments to the men's basketball team from yesterday?
Letter grade. Well,
yeah. So let's start with Ace Reiser. Let's go in chronological order.
Sure. Ace, I'd probably give that a B. Just that it's junior college player, did well for his institution, good handles, scoring, surprising high number of rebounds per game for someone who's only 6 feet tall. So I like that it shows that he's got a high motor and he goes after things. But he does come from a junior college, so and he's only 6 feet tall. So there's a few strikes against him for me. So I'd probably give him a B. There's some aspects of his game that I like, but as I've mentioned, there's some concerns I have too.
Yeah, and I think I'd be in the similar range. You're bringing him in to essentially be your backup point guard. You tend not to see a translation like he's not going to walk in and score 15 points per game for the Aggies this upcoming season. He's likely going to be maxing out at 6 or 7. I think especially with some of the other players they're bringing in and the kinds of roles they're going to have, the roles that Will Hornseth, Carson Templin, Solomon Callahan, AJ Bates, and obviously Mason Falslev at the top of the heap and all that. So,
but has the potential to score 15 points.
He does. Like he'd be that guy that comes off the bench in one game and hits like 5 3-pointers and gets you 15 to 18 points.
Yeah.
So he plays a key role as we're kind of expecting it to be a backup point guard. And I think he'll be good in his role, and he adds tremendous shooting and even a little bit of, microwave scoring, where I got to watch him actually watch some film as opposed to watching like 2 minutes of one of the games. I was able to watch most of the game and I went back to College of Southern Idaho against Snow College because I was also trying to keep an eye on Bron Roberts, who we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, Ace Reiser with kind of it felt like when he scored in the half court, he felt kind of like a running back in some cases, where there's some finesse to his game, but he's also trying to like split double teams, different things like that, just bullying his way, even as a 6 foot $165 guard, trying to bully his way into the paint with mixed success. Sometimes it worked really well. There's another time where he had a turnover. But yeah, I'd say B, maybe B-. I don't think I could, like, even my most optimistic vision of Ace Reiser coming to the Aggies where he's like the starting point guard, I think even then probably only B+ would be like the highest I'd go. And I lean toward B-, mainly because it's a transfer and it's your backup point guard. There's value. It's important to have that depth, but this isn't a home run. It's a double at best, a single at worst, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm giving him a B, but it wouldn't be much to persuade me into the B- range.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm more of an optimistic type, so I'll lean more in the B instead of over a B-, because I think that there's some things he can do to help the team. You don't have to be big and lengthy, though those things certainly can help.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I looked it up. There were 101 players last year who were listed 6 foot and shorter that averaged 10 points per game. That's like a third of.
That's not bad.
That's a third of the teams in Division I have, and like I think more than a dozen of those were power conference guys.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So I'm not really as concerned about his height. He's going to come in and do what he needs to do, but he's not going to be like this dominant force on the court. And so that's where, it just depends on what your grading scale is. Let's talk about Collin Mulholland, the Chattanooga center. This last year averaged 7.6 points, 3.4 rebounds, 1.7 assists. Shot 44% from the field, though a lot of that was his 3-point shooting percentage, because if you look at his 2-point percentage, he was a hair under 60%. He shot just fine inside the arc. He's also injured a lot, was in and out of the lineup with injuries, and that really impacted him. Like his freshman year, he actually had much better shooting stats, at least from 3. He was a hair above 60% on 2-pointers his freshman year, so injuries kind of hurt him a little bit. And actually, the highlight reel that I was able to watch, I only had so much time to watch film, so I settled for watching highlights of Mulholland last night. And they were from his freshman year, and he looked pretty good. He was hitting clutch shots. Most of them were 3-pointers. This is a guy who I think will remind a lot of people of Isaac Johnson. where he is a 3-point shooter. As a center, he's 6'11", 235 pounds. He's going to be one of your tallest guys in the rotation, and he's going to shoot about as many threes as some of the guards. But yeah, he's also interesting. The thing that intrigues me the most, and it's the thing that I really want to dive into, and unfortunately with how many transfers are stacking up, I'm like seeing these new players come in, and I'm realizing that in my order of doing these newcomer breakdowns, I'm like 3 or 4 players away from getting to watch in-depth film on this guy. But
keep getting stacked up. Yeah,
1.7 assists per game as a center. You don't see that very often.
No.
Usually you'll be somewhere under 1 assist, maybe slightly over 1 assist. And for a guy who I think only played 17 minutes a game.
Yeah, he averaged on the season 17 minutes. About 7.5 points, about 3.5 rebounds, 1.7 assists, half of a block per game.
Yeah,
so every other game he's getting a block.
Yeah,
but a good shooter and good at the free throw line too. So a guy his size, he's an 82% free throw shooter.
Yeah, this is someone who is definitely going to be the stretch 5 who will actually shoot a lot. Because Carson Templin, with him at power forward or center, depending on where he's been playing, he can hit a 3-pointer if he really needs to. Sean Feltz is kind of in a similar way where he, late in his senior season, began to shoot more of those. Collin Mulholland will rise and fire. And it's why I bring up the comparison to Isaac Johnson. Isaac Johnson, if he was open a little bit, he's like, look, I'm 7 feet tall and I can hit a 3-pointer. I'm just going to shoot it. And I think Collin Mulholland is going to be similar in that sense. And I think if you look at who's going to start at center, I was pretty sure that Sean Feltz was going to play, it was going to be like that 15-minute per game type starter, the way the Aggies have had, like with Abin Gadarazzi and Zach Keller and Isaac Johnson actually on that list. But I think Collin Mulholland has a pretty solid chance of taking that role instead, where he's a little bigger. He's listed at 235. Sean Feltz is probably generously listed at 220 pounds. So Mulholland brings in more size, and he's played at the Division I level, provided he's healthy. I really like what he's able to bring. He's also got great passing for a big, which is something that's really helpful in Ben Jacobson's offense. The amount of chances he'll get to make simple but important passes. Will Hornseth stacked assists as a big. He had one of the highest assist percentages, like top 30, I think, assist percentage among players 6'8" or taller last year. And I think Mulholland could end up, in a similar way where he's able to make some plays as a passer in addition to being able to stretch the floor from 3. And it's kind of interesting what we're seeing with Utah State, where the 3 centers they have signed, Bron Roberts, Collin Mulholland, Sean Feltz, all of them are viable 3-point shooters.
Yeah, Mulholland, he was 13 of 60 from 3 this last season. It's only about 27%.
Yeah, but you look at his freshman year, though, and again, I think injuries played a factor in how poorly he shot this past year. But you look at his freshman year, you look at his free throw percentage, I'm not saying he's going to walk out there and shoot 38%, but I think this upcoming year, you're likely to see him be capable of shooting league average. Again, it's around 33, 34%.
Yeah, so he does show a propensity to want to shoot. Somebody with that size, it'd be interesting, the pairing of Mulholland and Templin, or Mulholland and Hornseth. Just if they go big, they can still put one of the 6'10" guy. He can float out. He can set that high screen and then hang out there and be able to hit threes, draw the opposing big man out to try to guard him, and leave a little bit more room for the other big man for Utah State to go to work in the paint.
Yeah, it's interesting because Ben Jacobson has run a 5-out offense. And mind you, Jared Calhoun ran a 5-out offense. Granted, there are a decent number of differences in exactly how they're running this, but Ben Jacobson runs a 5-out offense. He's been running a 5-out offense without 5 shooters on the court, which you can do, but you usually have to have at least 4. And the 5th one, you just kind of have to make work. The few times he's had, and I detailed this a little bit in my breakdown of his offense, the article I wrote, I think like a month ago now, but I talked about some of the times where he did have a stretch five, like an actual stretch five who could hit 3-pointers. And those are some of his better offenses that he's had. He's now stacking shooting centers. And like Will Hornseth, of anyone in the front court, he's probably the worst 3-point shooter. He shot 4 of 9 last year, which, low volume, and that's something that's really easy to, well, if you manage to hit a few of them, it looks good, because I think technically his percentage is like 44%, whatever 4 out of 9 is. But what happens if he's able to up that to shooting, 1 3-pointer a game, and he makes 14 or 15 of them? That'd be shooting 9 on 50%, but like say he I guess he'd make like 9 or 10 of them. Like be able to take a 3-pointer every game and make one every other game. If he's able to add that, suddenly if Will Hornseth becomes this close to viable 3-point shooter, and you look at some of the other recruits they're bringing in, they'll basically never have a lineup on the court where you don't have 5 players that are all viable 3-point shooters. And there will be several who are dangerous 3-point shooters. Solomon Callahan, Mason Falslev, those two in particular, Ace Reiser. Like, you've got 3 guys who are going to be on around shooting 40+% from 3. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of guys who are capable of shooting at or slightly above a NCAA average in 3-point. That's something that I think is going to be really interesting this season, is that the Aggies are probably going to be the best 3-point shooting team in the conference, the way these recruits and lineups are starting to shake out when you see the players that Jacobson is bringing in. So as far as a letter grade, like I think with Ace Reiser, it was B minus if you're pessimistic, but I'd probably lean more towards a B. With Mulholland, I'd say B minus, just because, again, at his highest, he's a guy that's playing like 21, 22 minutes. You're still going to lean more into Will Hornseth and Carson Temple. Like, those are your 2 best players. And so, again, and that letter grade, again, isn't about the quality of Mulholland as a player. It's about the player you're bringing into a particular role.
Yeah.
You're bringing in a solid player to a reserve role or a low minutes role. Good recruit, but understand the potential impact he's going to have based on the role you're recruiting him into.
Ace Reiser was on a team that knew how to win games, and he was a part of helping them win games. Mulholland was on a team that struggled to win games. They were, 13-19 this season in Chattanooga. They lost in the first round to the Citadel. Had a chance to tie the game or have a game-winning shot. They kind of fumbled the ball, and Citadel was able to get it and score the go-ahead points and advance. Mulholland had games this season where he was a walking double-double. And if you can get a walking double-double on your team, great, awesome. But he also has games where he scores 4 or 5 points and he only pulls down a couple of rebounds. And yes, as we mentioned, he had some injuries kind of here and there, but he still played in a good number of games. So I like his potential. I like the idea of Mulholland, but you have a 6'10" guy who can stretch the floor. But what he's actually been able to produce in the team he's been a part of, not as exciting. So I'm with you. I'd put him at a B minus. Maybe even a C plus if he can stay healthy and continue to refine his game. And he still has time. He's still fairly young. But if he can do those things and become more consistent, then this could be a really awesome pickup for Coach Jacobson. But right now, based on what he's done, freshman season better than his sophomore season. So if he can get back to kind of that form, then this will be a good pickup. But for right now, I'm in the B minus territory for Mulholland.
8968. Now, this was sent in, I believe, when we were still talking about Reiser and debating whether or not B minus. But 8968 saying, when Utah State has C minus income, a B minus isn't too bad. So, which I think is true.
Yeah.
And then 1181 sending in their thoughts, their letter grades for all of these players. Ace Reiser, a C. Mulholland, Big Maple, a C+. And then believe it's supposed to be Bron Roberts. It says Johnson, but that says C. So I believe.
Yeah.
it.
So
let's get into a Bron Roberts.
181, just usually about a letter grade below where we're
just
at.
a little bit more pessimistic, which I can understand. Like none of these players are going to, like, they're not home run recruits. They
don't have P4 experience.
They're not even triples, or at best they're a double if you're comparing it to hits in baseball. These are players that you're bringing in to fill out your bench or be fringe starters. Like these are not like when Aggies are asking for a number 2 type scorer. None of these guys is going to be that. I'd expect 1 or 2 of these recruits that they brought in to probably not be in the rotation. There's a decent likelihood that 1 or 2 of these guys doesn't see the rotation. I tell you who I suspect that is. But that's like, these are guys that are on the middle to back end of your rotation. Ace Reiser going to be that backup point guard likely, so he'll be a little bit closer to the front, but still he's at best your 6th or 7th man. Mulholland, maybe your 5th starter, the guy who starts at center. So like you got to keep that in context of who these guys are going to be. But even with that understood, I like them as prospects, and I especially like them for the role they're going to play. Ben Jacobson didn't bring them in to be stars. So you can view them in that sense and say, hey, yeah, for the type of recruit they are, for the type of role that you're fitting them into, I like Collin Mulholland and his ability to have that impact. Basically, Zach Keller plus, or similar to what Isaac Johnson was. Yeah. Ace Reiser, he can be something akin to Colby King in some respects.
Yeah,
different archetype.
He'll have a role. It's not a starring role, but it's a role. And you need role players.
Yeah.
You need players who are willing to play a very specific role.
Yeah. You need guys to star in their roles. And so I think that that's what these guys are able to do.
Yes, I agree. So let's talk about the third one, which came a little bit later in the evening, but another big man for Utah State, Bron Roberts, another Snow College transfer from the junior college ranks. And again, another player from the state of Utah, not just from Snow College, but played his high school ball at Timpanogos, 7 feet tall, 7-foot wingspan, and somebody who can stretch the floor. He's another guy who can step out and hit a 3, but needs a little bit more meat on those bones. 7 feet tall, but only 220 pounds.
Yeah. And yes, and I think he also was injured at the tail end of last season. He only played 16 games, played a little bit in a game in February, and then that was his last game. And Snow College was going to the JUCO, national tournament, so he was missing some time late in the season. But coming off the bench in most games, I think he might have started a game or 2, but he was usually coming off the bench behind Sean Feltz. Would play with Sean Feltz in some cases though. Where it was interesting, where you had 2, a 6'11" and a 7-foot guy out there at the same time, and we're generally able to make it work. But yeah, so he's coming into his sophomore year. Sean Feltz is coming into his junior year, so there's more experience from Feltz, more experience from Mulholland, who's also going into his junior year. So I would expect Bron Roberts to probably be on the outside looking in as far as the front court rotation. He needs a little bit more experience, needs to put a little bit more weight on. And I like him as a prospect. I think he's a more athletic version of Sean Feltz and has a little bit more. He's a little bit further along in his development as a 3-point shooter, where Feltz kind of just barely discovered that the back end of his sophomore season at Snow College. Bron Roberts is doing that from the very beginning, walking in the door as a freshman. I'm a 7-footer who can shoot it. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that he already has, and he's developed. He's got a tad more length. I mean, he's listed 1 inch taller and a 1 inch longer wingspan than Feltz. So we'll see what kind of prospect he can develop into, but I think he might end up sitting on the bench for the most part this next year, behind Mulholland, behind Feltz. But it's early. Those are assumptions. But again, I do like him as a prospect. Now, if I'm given a letter grade, it's probably C+, because again, you're pulling in a guy who I think is going to sit on the bench most of the year, so not going to get overly positive about it.
I'm with you. I'm in the C category here. You get a 7-footer, and there aren't a lot of 7-footers walking around, but he is a prospect. He's a project. So he's somebody that you can stash on the bench, let him gain more weight, gain more strength, learn what it means to compete at this level. This is a future project, but you get to secure him now and provide an opportunity for him to build. So I would give, Reiser, I gave him a B, Mulholland, a C, a B minus, and then Roberts a C. So as they came on across the board last night, they kind of were in descending letter grades for me.